What is the new covenant? This is a massive question in Christian theology, and I certainly won't claim to resolve it today, but I want to look at one angle of this from one particular image or text out of Joshua chapter 2. This is Eric Slawick, the UWM Penn guy, and this is the Bible commentary. As always, if you like what you're seeing, I would ask that you hit like and subscribe in order to help the channel grow. And now, without further ado, let's get into the Word. So, today we are going to study Joshua chapter 2, verse number 14. And this will therefore, as one verse, probably be a more brief video. So let's read the verse. And the men said to her, "Our life for yours, even to death, if you do not tell this business of ours. Then when the Lord gives us the land, we will deal kindly and faithfully with you." So first of all, let's start out by looking at the sort of negative element of this, which is conditionality, where this verse, by definition, gives us a covenant which is conditional. Our life for yours. Both parties are putting their life up essentially as collateral that they will fulfill their word and the conditions of the promise. So this is a conditional covenant. It lines up with the blessings and the cursings under the law covenant that God made with the nation of Israel, and not with the new covenant, which is the main subject of this video. So here I will put up again a brief sample of the blessings and cursings from that law covenant. And you'll see, blessed are you, blessed are you, blessed are you, cursed are you, cursed are you, cursed are you. And it's worth mentioning that the curses are double the length, roughly, of the blessings. God was perhaps anticipating that most of their history was going to fall into the curses category, as is most of the personal history of every sinner that tries to redeem themselves through works or through good behavior. Now, I will say that, again, I don't think we should necessarily be too hard on Rahab or the spies. They're simply acting according to their culture, and it was just natural for them to seek some sort of solidification of their agreement by means of business contract. That doesn't justify it. The ideal, as I mentioned previously, is, in a previous video, is swear not at all. But God, we're seeing, uses imperfect means to accomplish a perfect end. So now the second thing in this verse will be this idea of ransoming. Our life for yours, even to the death. Now, I'm not big on over-typologizing things, but it's difficult not to see in this a sort of cultural background explanation for the idea of ransom in the gospel. And lays this out most clearly when he says, "He who knew no sin became sin, in order that we," and he's speaking of God's people here, "might become the righteousness of God through him," being Christ. So that this is the idea of ransoming, that God ransomed the life of Christ in return for the lives of God's people. Christ is able to save to the uttermost, it says in Hebrews, those who draw near to God through him. He's the great high priest who ever lives to make intercession for his people, and he literally became sin. The depths of that mystery we will never begin to plumb, but we can get the basic idea. For Paul says in another verse, "Cursed is all that which hangs upon a tree." And that's speaking of Christ's death upon the tree of the cross. And so Christ was under the positive, active wrath and judgment of God when he was on the cross. God saw him and saw the sin of every person that would ever accept Christ by grace through faith alone. It is a remarkable reality, an unfathomable reality. And it's a reality that's somewhat portrayed here in this ransom covenant, though certainly in only a merely infinitesimal shadow. But we can see that the context of this new covenant was this language of covenant and this idea of reciprocation, where the reciprocation here was, it was more like the reciprocation you see with the covenant that God made with Abraham. In Genesis 15, God put Abraham to sleep and cut up the sacrificial victim of the covenant, and he walked through the pieces by himself, signifying that it was a one-sided covenant. There was no reciprocation, except in the new covenant parallel of faith, repentance and faith being the conditions, which, as I've alluded to or laid out several times before, those are actually the gift of God when a person is made alive spiritually, so that it is truly all of God, even though we co-participate in a sense. So that's the new covenant, one angle of the new covenant. It is not reciprocal in the sense of the law covenant and the covenant that Rahab made with the spies, but it is reciprocal in the other sense that it was a covenant of ransoming one life for another, or in the case of Christ, for many lives. And so, if you haven't become a part of this new covenant, I would encourage you today is the day of salvation, to turn to Christ by grace alone, through faith alone, and accept that atoning death on the cross is the only means of salvation. Until next time, this is Eric Slawick, the UWM Penn guy, and this has been the Bible Commentary.